And they were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority and not as the scribes. So Jesus, if you remember, he expanded his sphere of influence. He decided that, hey, to be effective in the ministry, I need to bring people alongside of me. So he had just gathered his disciples, and he was teaching them to do one thing, is to reach out to others, to keep duplicating what Jesus was doing. And his first training session was to do what? To take them to church. But it was a very important church meeting. He took them not so that they would learn to be served. We're not going there to get something for us. We're going there, the purpose of being there is to serve others. That's the reason that we're going. And notice, he didn't pick the temple. The temple's in Jerusalem. The temple is the big church, if you would. He went to a synagogue on the Sabbath. And the synagogue, what it is just a place that is devoted to prayer and reading of the Word and learning. And it was on the outskirts of the towns. It was for really small little cities. It would be so small that all it would take to build a synagogue is if there were 10 or more adult Jewish believing males there. So it could have been a very small congregation. But what I love about this is this practice that Jesus would instill in his ministry and into the disciples of reaching those that were the least first. He went to the smallest, to the outcast. It will mark Jesus' ministry. It will mark the disciples. They will understand it where he's coming from. Now, the synagogue is an interesting place because if there's no sacrifices going on, the sacrificial system wasn't there. It wasn't set up to do that. So if there were no sacrifices, you didn't have high priests, you didn't have the great speakers of the area that would attend these. They were just lay people, just every ordinary day people that were teaching. And a few of them were blessed to have what they call the scribes. And the scribes, what their job was, it was just to read the scripture out loud and possibly read a few notes from the high priest, from the teachers in the area, and they would share. And what they were doing, though, is they were passing on someone else's relationship to the believers that were there. Something that they heard or read about. At best, they were passing on second-hand information about who God was. Possibly even third. We see this today in the spiritual movement that keeps growing around us. People who they believe in a God, or they have picked up an idea about God by listening to someone else. They haven't come to know Him for themselves. They never move past the head knowledge of who God is and move into a real relationship with Him. That can happen in the church, that can happen in a cult, that can happen anywhere where people are not understanding the value, the importance of knowing Him for themselves. I like what Rochelle said. It moved from, this is my parents' faith, to now it's become my faith. So imagine a small church that is standing there. Remember, so from Malachi to Matthew was 400 years of silence from God. Nobody had heard from Him. Imagine the teaching. How dry the preaching must have been day after day in that place. And just at this moment, Jesus walks in. And for the first time, He teaches, and everyone, I love the word, is astonished. Why? Because He's teaching with such authority. He is teaching beyond what the scribes are doing. Look, there's something different. This guy, he's got some first-hand information to give us. We're not getting hand-me-downs about what somebody else has been through, but this guy has been through it. And it was even more evident because of the authority that he was talking about, the Greek here word. It was evident that not only did he know God, but it was so evident that he was God. This was God speaking to us. And I was thinking about, as I've gotten to know you through the testimony night and through just us getting together one-on-one, there's so many of us who have experienced the fake presentation of man for far too many years. Somebody else handing down something that they had learned about God versus what they had learned by having a relationship with Him. And to even go farther than that, I believe a lot of us, including myself in some seasons of my life, we have been the scribes. We have been the ones passing down what somebody else has told us about God versus knowing Him for ourselves. And it doesn't take, you don't have to go very far. Just go to our families, our spouses, our friends, our children, even our neighbors, and they see right through us. They see right through the fake. And for the last year and a half, as we've opened the Word, time and time again, through not only the Word, but through these testimonies, through people sharing, through all these things, we have heard Jesus' invitation to do what? Come into His near presence. Come and be with me. Come and fellowship with me. Come and walk with me. There is far better things than just showing up and teaching a dry message once a week. I have a life that is more abundant for you, that I have a plan and a purpose for you. So when we share or hear these testimonies, we see how our relationship with Jesus is life-changing. Rochelle's our 6th or 7th person who's done this so far. And every single testimony has been the same. When I found Him for myself, when I knew Him and I drew close to Him because He was beckoning me to come into His presence, my whole world changed. My whole life changed. It was flipped upside down. And as you look here in the text, you can see the same thing through the church, through the people that were there. They were waiting. The world is waiting to hear the words of Jesus. Not the opinions of man, not anything else. They want to hear the words of Jesus, the real kingdom authority, the real Jesus. They want to see Him portrayed to them. And we have a few minutes tonight. And I want to be sincere about this. That as Jesus is picking His inner circle, His 12 guys, we today as just people, we have that same sphere of influence. We have that same group of friends and family that we know, that we are embedded in life with. Not before we ever even reach out to anybody we don't know, or to the stranger, or to the enemy, we have people in our lives that desperately need to hear the words of Jesus. They need to desperately understand who He is, and we have been called to be that voice of Jesus to them. Do you really believe that you guys have family, myself included in this, that we have family, friends, and neighbors, that we have been divinely placed where we are in the time and the season and the part of life that we're in? We have been divinely appointed by God to be there so we can influence them for the gospel. Do we really believe that? Well, I'm telling you, that's the truth. That's what the gospel is all about. I created you at this time in life because there's someone I needed you to share the gospel with. Paul says this, now is the day of salvation.